Hey everybody, check out this video on Nietzsche and playing the victim, and let me know if this sounds like dog culture to you.
And in it, he talks about how some people use morality like a dog leash to control others. They use morality to get people to do what they want. It's an interesting idea with lots of implications, but I'm interested in exploring one particular version of this idea: playing the victim. Someone who plays the victim is an example of someone who uses morality to gain power. And that's what I want to explore in this essay.
Using morality to gain power. I really believe that's what dog culture does. They play this whole thing against people of, well, you're not a good person if you don't like dogs. You're not loving and caring. You don't care for animals. They act as if anyone has a legitimate complaint about the presence of dogs, that they're somehow violating a special moral code. And so they're using this morality to overpower their fellow humans.
But before we can understand what it means to play the victim, we need to understand what it means to be a victim. For this essay, we can define a victim as someone who's taken advantage of by another person. And we can call the act of taking advantage of someone a crime. And typically, what we want for all victims is justice. And justice, as discussed by Nietzsche, can be thought of as giving back to the victim what was lost when the crime was committed. In other words, you can think of justice as the repaying of debts. The criminal must repay the debt they acquired by taking advantage of the victim. I'm not saying this is what justice means.
So, how can dog owners repay humanity for the constant negative things that they bring? They can't, and they won't. So, within dog culture, there is no justice. There's just people being victimized by the presence of dogs.
But this is a way that many people understand justice, and this definition is important in the context of this video. So what does it mean to play the victim? What separates a genuine victim from someone playing the victim? A genuine victim was actually taken advantage of, but someone playing the victim wasn't. And how do you determine whether someone was actually taken advantage of? It comes down to consent. Someone is taken advantage of when their presence is used in a way they didn't agree to.
Okay, so think about that consent. When you go to a public park or a beach or Home Depot, did you check a box somewhere that said you're going to allow yourself to be attacked, bothered, jumped up on, bitten, having your children chased away if you stop and have a picnic? Did you consent to a bunch of people's dogs interrupting you? No, you didn't consent to that.
And so true victim did not give consent or was not in a position to give consent, such as in the case of a child or someone who was severely intoxicated.
Yeah, a child or intoxicated, such as people that are in the dog culture marketing, they're intoxicated by this thought process of they have to have a dog to complete their family or whatever else.
But someone who plays the victim gives legitimate consent and then claims they didn't. Or they claim you consented to things which you didn't consent to or were not in a position to consent to.
Yeah, so dog owners and dog culture, they're acting as if you gave consent for their dogs to do all of this stuff when you really didn't. And they are also acting as if they never gave consent. So when something bad happens where someone has to defend himself against a dog that's chasing them, and then the dog ends up, being hurt or sent to the pound because of a dog attack or a dog bite or a dog running into traffic, the dog owner will say, well, I never gave you consent to defend yourself from my dog. And then the dog owner will play the victim.
I'll explore what both cases look like a little later on. So, why would someone play the victim? To put it simply, they play victim so someone will save them from their problems. They're looking for a rescuer.
Yeah, this is huge in the dog culture. Anytime anything happens bad with somebody's dog, their dog gets away, bites somebody, and then a police officer has to shoot the dog. The owners play victim. The owners are like, oh no, save us, help us, rescue us. our poor dog, he just didn't get the right training, he just got triggered, and etc., so on and so forth.
And how do they get people to save them? Someone who plays the victim has two main weapons: obligation and guilt, and pity and disgust. Let's take
And another thing about that whole rescue part of this conversation, it's the same thing with the dogs, rescue dogs, shelter dogs, all these dogs. Supposedly we just need to adopt them all and everything will be fine. You need to adopt more dogs, you need to do this and that, and that's the obligation and guilt of dog culture.
take a look at the first weapon: obligation and guilt. Here, the person playing the victim claims that you consented to things that you didn't consent to or were not in a position to consent to. They impose an obligation on you and make you feel guilty for not living up to that obligation.
Yeah, dog culture people, they constantly expect you to do all kinds of stuff, change your behavior. Like even little kids need to respect dogs and act this way and act that way.
They try to coerce you into paying a debt that you did not consent to taking on. Let's
Yeah, paying a debt that you did not consent to taking on, constantly tolerating the barking, constantly tolerating the attacks, and then they guilt you. They guilt you all over the place with marketing. Oh, this poor dog didn't get adopted. This dog didn't get adopted. This dog didn't get rescued. It jumped off a cliff, and it's your fault. You didn't go save it.
take a look at an example. At the age of 22, Jane's husband left her with their two sons, Jamie and Michael. Jane told herself that she would dedicate her life to her sons, and that in return they would take care of her. I will take care of them, she thought, and in return they can never leave me. So keep that in mind. Jane is imposing an obligation on her sons. She is binding them into a covert contract. But they're children. They're not in a position.
So that's not exactly like dog culture, but that's the covert contract of this victimhood. You're being pushed into a contract that you're not aware of. It's like when kids are born into families that are full of dogs and then they're getting clobbered around, knocked over, having to jump out of their crib because the dog wants to sleep in the crib. They're being forced to play out this contract with their parents because their parents have this hobby of owning a dog.
Position to consent to such a contract. So, how does this play out? Jane will do anything for them as long as they don't leave her alone. But as they start growing up, naturally, they start wanting to live their own lives. They want to spend time with their friends and lovers. And anytime they want to leave the house, anytime they want to do something.
Now, a side note about this little part about the parent, parents, kids nowadays don't go out and do these things that this video is talking about as much, and parents will use the presence of dogs to keep their kids at home too. Like, you need to stay home and take care of the dog. You got that dog, that's a lifetime thing. You better stay home and take care of the dog. So when you apply dog culture to these concepts, there's a whole lot more going on.
Something without her. Anytime she feels them creating some distance from her, their mom uses guilt and obligation to make them stay.
Yeah, there's the guilt and obligation. You need to take care of the dog. What about the dog? Oh, the dog's old and sad. Oh, the dog is young and needs training. Obligation and guilt. It's in society with the dog marketing, and it's in relationships with the presence of the dog. Even like a boyfriend and girlfriend, they're going to go do something, go to the coast, go hiking. It's like, oh, what about the dog? Oh, you're not going to bring the dog. Oh, it's obligation and guilt.
She says, "After everything I've done for you, after all the time, energy, and money I've spent on you, you're just going to leave me? You are terrible sons. You should be ashamed." But is this fair of Jane to do? She imposed this.
Have you ever seen that out in the dog culture? Oh, you should be ashamed. You didn't keep the dog. Like when people really need to rehome a dog or get rid of a dog because they're pregnant or they got a job or a transfer or someone in their family might have died or someone in their family came down with dementia. Thousands of legitimate reasons, but society will obligation and guilt people all the time. Like, oh, you're such a bad person. You don't want to spoil a dog.
Contract on her kids. I will take care of you as long as you never leave me, when they were not in a position to consent to such a contract. And whenever they seem to threaten her contract, she uses guilt and obligation to force them to comply again. Instead of handling the problem of loneliness in a mature and healthy way, she emotionally blackmails her sons into rescuing her.
This emotional blackmail is a big part of dog culture too. We're constantly expected to allow dogs to do all kinds of stuff, knock us over on the park, bark at us, make us change our habits. We got to buy earplugs, white noise machines, deal with the turds and the piss everywhere. And if you say anything, you get treated like you're some kind of bad person. And that's the part about using morality against us and, playing this puppeteer crap.
Now let's look at the second weapon someone uses when playing the victim: pity and disgust. Here, the person playing the victim claims that they did not give you legitimate consent when they actually did. They're trying to claim they didn't give you legitimate consent so that others will feel pity for them and disgust for you.
Yeah, so take like any anti-dog YouTube channel or any true legitimate complaint against dogs. The people will look for pity. Like if someone makes a legitimate complaint about dogs or talks about dogs attacking kids at the bus stop, dogs killing grandma, they will say, "Oh, you need to pity me," and then they will garner disgust for you. "Oh, you're just a dog hater. Oh, you haven't met enough pit bulls. Oh, you need to pet my Rottweiler and you'll change your mind." Or, "You need to get over your fear of dogs. You're disgusting." So, this is another route that the dog owners and the dog culture use against people,
If people feel pity for
people that have not entered in this contract of allowing dogs to basically tear our society apart.
them, they get people on their side and increase the chances that someone will come and rescue them.
Yeah, these are, the dog lovers. "Oh my god, you said something about dogs that we don't approve of. Oh, you're such a bad person. We're so disgusted with you."
If people feel disgust for you, the person playing the victim turns people against you, which will
This is the dog defenders. These are the people that, "Not my dog. My dog would never. No." "Oh, a pit bull killed a toddler. No, not my pit bull. You're an evil person for saying that. We're all mad at you for telling the truth."
increase the chances that you submit to their demands. Let's return to our example. So Jane's attempt to use guilt and obligation works on one of her sons, Jamie, but they fail to work on Michael. Michael tells his mom that he's moving away to go to a good college. So what does Jane do when guilt and obligation fail? She uses pity and disgust. She says to Jamie, the son who feels obligated to her, "Can you believe Michael would do that to his own mother? He took all of my money and then left me all alone." She makes Jamie feel pity towards her, increasing the chances he'll rescue her, and makes him feel disgust towards his brother Michael, increasing.
Yeah, can you believe that person doesn't like dogs? Can you believe that? And my dog is a good dog. He's a rescue dog. Garnering pity and then making people feel disgusted against somebody that's made a legitimate complaint against dogs.
The chances Jamie will abandon Michael or coerce him into submitting to his mother's demands. But is it fair for Jane to claim that Michael took all of her money and left? Remember, Jane's contract is "I will take care of you as long as you never leave me." Jane was an adult when she chose to enter that contract for Michael, but Michael was just a baby. Jane was capable of giving legitimate consent, and she
Yeah, and when millions of people go buy dogs and bring dogs into their home, they didn't ask everyone out in society if they consented. "Hey, I'm going to get a dog, and as my neighbor, you're going to have to deal with the barking, the shitting. Your toddler can't play outside because my dog is going to chase your toddler." No, they didn't get consent from everyone else in society that this nasty dog is going to affect. And this story about the mom and the kids is very similar.
did, but she expected a mutual consent from Michael that he wasn't in a position to give as a child. And even if Michael was able to give consent, he might not have wanted to enter into that contract with his mother, one where she supports him in exchange for him never leaving her alone. So she gave him legitimate consent to receive her support as a child. But now that he's not meeting her demands, she's trying to claim that she never gave him consent and that he took advantage of her. That's just one example of someone playing the victim. But it
Dog people themselves give consent when they step out of their front door and allow that dog to run around in areas that are owned by other humans. Cemeteries, stores, parking lots, beaches, parks, restaurants, those are all places that tax-paying humans have the right to go, and a dog doesn't necessarily have the right to go. A dog is just an accessory. So you take your dog over to Albertsons and let it walk around in the fresh produce department. You've given consent for everybody to say something to you because you're out in society breaking the rules, allowing your dog to spread fecal material on food. But yet, when a dog owner that does something like that gets confronted or talked to, they will play the victim and say, "Oh, you're mean for saying this to my dog." They will act as if you have no right, as if they never gave you consent to critique their dog, but they actually did.
It can happen in many different types of relationships, between lovers, family, friends, or coworkers. But everyone who plays the victim has one thing in common: covert contracts. What's
Yeah, the covert contract. This is the whole thing about dog culture. They just think everybody freaking loves their dog. They don't want to be critiqued. They don't want to fess up to anything they did. Their dog attacks somebody, they're gone. Their dog shits all over the place, they're gone. If somebody wants to talk about anything about dog culture, they take it personally and they don't want to have anything to do with it, and then they'll play the pity and disgust games like talked about earlier. So we have a hidden expectation of someone else. That's dog owners. They're entitled. They have this constant expectation of everyone to drop a knee to their needs of their dog. Everything that a dog owner does with their dog in front of them, it's like their narcissist entourage. Like they think that they are royalty and they can get away with all kinds of crap, all kinds of nasty stuff that a normal person, a normal product, any other thing that has safety regulations would never get away with. But when they have a dog with them, they expect that just to be taken care of constantly.
Remember, I said that a person can play the victim in two ways. The first way is that they can give you legitimate consent and then claim they never gave it to you. But why would they claim they didn't give it to you? Usually because they had a hidden expectation, a covert contract, which you didn't live up to. And so now they want to claim they never gave you consent to punish you or to.
Yeah, my dog attacked you, but I'm sitting here saying my dog is friendly, my dog is the best guy ever, and then a little kid pets the dog, and then the little kid nearly bleeds to death or something. And then the people will say, well, the kid didn't do this to the dog right. The kid broke a contract. So I'll stop right there. This is a pretty long one, huh? But that's the playing the victim of dog culture. They have this covert contract. They act as if they never gave anybody consent, but yet they did by going out in public with their nasty dog.